Nerve settler for him. Kick on the way, looks nice. That is brilliant.
These players with the height, but Pendlebury finds the ball on the ground. Will give to Goey. Through the middle they go. Here's a chance. Chris on his left just sails towards goal. All on his lonesome. Confident about it. Collingwood up. The Lynch did really well. Gave it off to Goey. Now McCreary. Don't argue. Goal the Pies. Over the top he goes through the middle of the SCG. Chance for Hunt. Does it sit for him? In the end it does, but the Pies are chasing.
Pendlebury looks pretty good, looks really good. That's a 19.
And he spotted Noble. So they've crept forward well. Is there one more to come? There is. Drifting down to the pocket. Hoskin Elliott, the natural leap. And then second game. A few tricks which we saw in the play last week, but this is just a straight drop punt, and it has the carry. And look how much it means to him.
Radigalia, Grundy. No one really wins the contest. Grundy at ground level. Hurried snap. And the Pies have got their first goal of the match.
Doesn't even want to stay there, even though the ball was near. The leg injury. Can't be good. Noble. Mychek found a way onto the footy, and the delivery was perfect again.
What we've seen all day, just present up, and you will be on it. Like that.
Not the best kick from Bianco.
No, I think he's a very good ball user, Hutto, but it hasn't been his best day by foot.
It ends with Quaynor. We know he's got the length. It's line ball. No, it's not. Mouth wide open in joy for the Pies again.
Hi everyone and welcome to Talent Talk. Today we're going to be going through the Collingwood Football Club and the Gold Coast Suns list management. So let's get started with Collingwood. So Collingwood had a position in 16th. Their list size for 2021 was 43 with 36 on the main list, 6 rookies and 3 Cap Bs. Their mid-year draft selection was Ash Johnson, a medium tall forward from Sturt, Aidan Begg, a ruck forward from Eastern Rangers, and Basru Faye, who's a Category B ruck from Oakley Chargers. Average age in 2021 was 24.2, which makes them the 12th oldest list, and the average games is 66.2, which makes them the 11th most experienced list. So for our list management masterclass, we're going to be looking at one of their draft picks in Oliver Henry. So Oliver Henry was taken with pick 17. He slid quite a bit from where the draft boards had him. He's a medium, I'd say medium tall forward. He probably plays more as a tall, recruited from St. Mary's and St. Joseph's College in Geelong. So Brendan, we've seen him play a few games so far. He's got amazing hands and a really great leap. They had him in at the start of the year and it didn't quite work out for him. Well, what are your thoughts on his output so far?
Yep, so he's currently played 10 games this year and he has slowly built into form and he did that through the VFL as well. So Oliver Henry is going to be a long-term prospect for the Collingwood Football Club and will build in the mould of a second or third tall forward who's going to be kicking around 30 to 40 goals a year for the Collingwood Football Club, and he's going to be pushing up the ground a little bit as well and possibly have a bit of midfield time, which he did at the Geelong Falcons in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, so we saw Collingwood, it was reported that Collingwood had interest in Jack Gunston for the last few years and even up to this year. Is that the kind of role you're seeing playing? Because from what I've seen, it's very similar to what Jack Gunston brought to Hawthorn during those premiership years.
Yeah, definitely. I see Oliver Henry playing that Jack Gunston type role. And if you look at the modern forwards for Melbourne Football Club, he's similar to a Bailey Fritsch role. So I see him playing that role. And Bailey Fritsch, obviously, for the Melbourne Football Club, has kicked about 50 goals for the year. And I see Oliver Henry doing that in the future.
Awesome. And now we move on to the age profiles. So from 18 to 22, there's 25 on the list. From 23 to 26, there's 7. From 27 to 29, there's 8. And 30 plus is 7, with a caveat because a few of them have already retired. So The oldest on the list is Scott Pendlebury, Chris Mayne, who's retired, Levi Greenwood, who retired mid-year, Jeremy Howe, who's just coming back from injury, Jordan Roughhead, Steele Sidebottom, and Mason Cox, who we believe will probably be on the trade table at the end of this year. So now, for A-grade players, so we believe Brodie Grundy's worked himself back into form to become that A-grader again. At the start of the year, I'd say that he probably wasn't there form-wise, and also last year. But for the last 5 to 6 games, he's really started to improve in his numbers, his ground ball numbers, which makes him an A-grade player. Darcy Moore, unfortunately, he's out injured, but he's the key post there, and he has become probably the, or if not one of the premier defenders in the competition. The emerging talent, John Noble at 24, Trent Bianco at 20, Finlay McRae at 18, and Oliver Henry at 18. The untouchables for us are Brodie Grundy, Taylor Adams, Crisp at 27, Moore, Maynard, and Isaac Quaynor. Their needs are key position depth and out-and-out A-graders. And for 22 and beyond, we want them to see, to target players that have more skill and run and high-end draft talent, which may be hard in some respects, Brendan. So let's talk about Collingwood's points problem, so to speak. So Collingwood, it looks like they're going to get pick 1 with Nick Dacos, and it'll cost them on average around 2,500 points. But at this moment, there's a deficit of around 1,000 to 1,200 points. So what does that mean for them trying to get high-end talent? Does that mean they're going to have to trade out to get more players in? How's it going to work?
Yep. So they're going to probably have a deficit of about 1,600 points going into 2022 if they are able to select Nicholas Dacos with pick 1. He is likely going to be that top 3 pick. There's no doubt about that. But what Collingwood are going to have to do, and they've already turned over 13 in the 2020 off season. They turned over 13 in the list because of salary cap constraints and that point system. That being said, there's going to be more movement in this off season, I believe. As you notice, we haven't mentioned Jordan De Goey or Jamie Elliott as of yet. Both are in their prime. Jordan De Goey is on a very heavy contract at the moment, but he only signed for that 2 years. I think it was last year or the year before. So they will need to re-sign him. It was last year, so they will need to re-sign him next year. But the likes of a Jamie Elliott could add to a list that is contending. So you're better off trading someone at that stature to receive a high second-round pick going into the 2021 draft to be able to gain a few more points, or bundle up a few players to gain points. And that's where we mentioned Mason Cox, who will add to a list depth to be able to gain a second or third round pick. We see in 2020, their list, there has been a 0.9 drop in their age because of the high turnover, and a 10.7% drop in their games average. So they were at 76.9 in 2020, and they've dropped that by 10.7% because of the list turnover. So going forward, we see them going for that high-end talent, but they're going to start really looking at the draft and rebuilding. But it all depends on who they bring in their coaching structure.
Yeah. So we've seen from their stats, from their list, that they've got a really good defensive unit there, and they seem to not concede many goals. This year, they've been sitting around points against around 5th, but it's their point to 4 where they've really struggled. So yes, some of that comes down to playing style and also the personnel, but it seems to me that forward is where they're really struggling at the moment. They do have some key position forwards coming through, and they have tried a few throughout the year. Do you see that to be their biggest weakness now and what they're looking for moving forward? I know they've got Ash Johnson in, who's a very talented player, but we haven't seen play yet. Do you think that's where they really need to focus all their efforts on?
Yeah, definitely, Greg. This is an area of improvement for the Collingwood list strategy going forward. They do have a couple of key forwards on their list, but there isn't any depth. Collingwood's list strategy over the past few years has been to develop and recruit hybrid forwards, or what I like to call a striker role, that being that they're a midfield hybrid forward. For example, the Hoskin Elliots, McCreary, Thomas, Poulter, McRae, Murphy, and McInnes, to name a few, are your hybrid midfield forwards, as well as the likes of debuts of Trent Bianco. Going forward, however, Myercheck's been their biggest goal kicker for the year, kicking 34 goals, but he is 28. And then you've got, again, another hybrid striker role in De Goey, who's kicked 22. Jamie Elliott's kicked 21. And then you've got your ruck forward, Darcy Cameron, who they are trying to develop in as a key position forward. He's kicked 21 goals, but he is 25, so he's about to hit his peak. And then obviously you've got Mason Cox, who is on the wrong side of 30 years old now. So they do have a couple of young up-and-coming forwards. We did discuss Ash Johnson, who they recruited in the mid-season draft, and he's standing around that 196 centimetre mark. So he's your key position forward, long-term future at 23 years of age. They did recruit father-son prospect Will Kelly as a key position player. He can play at both ends, but they've predominantly played him forward. But unfortunately for him, he's been struck down from injury for the past 2 years. And as we discussed before, Oliver Henry. But again, I feel he's more of that striker role, playing a bit of time in the midfield as his career progresses. Greg, what's your take on the ruck depth and in particular the role of Brodie Grundy?
With Brodie Grundy, Collingwood have gone down an interesting realm where they've gone and got ruckmen to be forwards. They did it with Darcy Cameron. They've done it with Mason Cox. They might do it again with Brodie Grundy and who knows, maybe with Max Lynch. So it's going to be interesting to see if they continue to go down that ruck forward path or if they go down and just try and find themselves an actual key forward that does not play in the ruck. So, yeah, it'll be a really interesting off-season for Collingwood. They've also got Yusuf Dib to contend with, who's another NGA kid.
Small defender.
Yeah, small defender who's really, really skillful. But once again, they may not have enough points for him, so that might just be it. So, yeah, I hope I hope for Collingwood fans' sake that that they're able to get some good points in for any players that they trade out this year. And Nick Dacos is going to be an out-and-out A grader in the next few years. So their midfield is going to look very much polished with that cherry on top, so to speak.
Yep, and I'll just add too, with Collingwood do have the knack of developing players from other sports. So they've obviously the Irish coming in to their club, they've been able to process and develop those players in their system. And as we saw in the Category B, which was announced about 2 months ago with Bassirou Faye, who is a basketball prodigy from Senegal and France. And he's come across into football, and we've seen him develop obviously through our connection with the Oakley Chargers. And from where he's come now to now being as part of the Collingwood Football Club, he's another one that the Collingwood hierarchy will develop into a very, very good player.
Yeah, I think with Bassirou, he's got the competitiveness already built into him. It's just getting skills and time into those skills so he can play at a competent level. But his physicality and attack on the football, and also his agility and skill for someone of that height in regards of ball handling skills is pretty phenomenal. So fingers crossed in the next 2-3 years we can see him start to make some headway. But for now, we're going to move on to the Gold Coast Suns.
Now he does that so well, doesn't he? The triple premiership title, though. He's coughed that up to Ainsworth. It's a pretty good-looking kick. Got good hands, Corbett, and there they are. Watching, managed to get a little toe-poking kick. Now Baker, genuine helicopter arts, went to don't argue, and then got. And they manufacture something from here. Marlon Pickett tracks the ball. Ben King picked it up nicely off his toes. Swallow, open goal square. Which way will it bounce? There's the goal they needed. Ben King. Looking for goal number 3, and Ben King's got it.
Miller, Lemons, 2-on-2 ahead of the ball. King up late, got there, couldn't mark it, gathered the crumb though. Townsend centering, unselfish and brilliant to Ellis. There's the David Teague. How important is this win this afternoon if they can get it? And Miller, one of those trying to stop them from getting it. That's a beauty to start this second term.
Tigers and Bombers. And late defeat last week against GWS. Flanders over to adjust and use Greenwood. Miller with speed. And the kick is marked inside forward 50 by Corbett with a nut. Look out for the leaping lizard in the ruck today as Rankin with beautiful hands over the top and has the Suns to go forward. Bit going on off the ball between King and Milligan, but it's alive now for Swallow to use King. And good awareness not to set up Weller, who would have been crunched, and as a result, Gold Coast have a shot from directly in front if they want it through Ainsworth. Look for a similar sort of method. The two Bens have 2 goals each, and they were both put under the microscope on Monday night from memory. Here's Anderson with time to take a bounce in the middle. 2-on-1 here, plenty of wrestling going on. Advantage for Rankin, and he's got 2 in this quarter, and it's all.
So here we are with the Gold Coast Suns. So they finished 15th this year with a list size of 48, with 38 on the main list, 8 rookies and 2 Category Bs. Their mid-year draft selection was Ned Moore from the Oakley Chargers, a tall developing ruckman. Average age this year was 23.7, which makes them the 16th oldest list. And their average games is 51.8, which makes them the 18th most experienced list. So for their list management masterclass, we're going to look today at Oleg Markov. So Oleg was traded from Richmond for a future 3rd round pick. He's become a very, very good role player for them, playing almost every game this year. Brendan, what are your thoughts on how he's gone this year, and why would you say that this is their masterclass for last year's list management?
Yep. So Oleg Markov has come from the Richmond system, as we know, and come from that premiership era for the Richmond Football Club. He moved to the Gold Coast Suns due to not getting enough opportunities through that half-back line, and he is a half-back flanker. So the likes of Bashahuli having his spot in that team, he's moved to the Gold Coast Suns, and he's actually replaced Jared Harbrow in that role at Gold Coast, and has played a real consistent leader role with the Gold Coast Suns across half-back, assisting the likes of Sam Collins. He's got a big future ahead of him because he's only 24 years of age as well. So he's going to continue to develop in his own right. But having that premiership and that finals experience from 2017 through to 2019, he is adding to that list as well. So he is our list management masterclass.
Beautiful. All right. And let's move on now to the age profiles. So they're from 18 to 22, they had 22 players in that bracket. From 23 to 26, they had 14. 27 to 29 with 9, and 30 plus with 3. Their oldest on the list, well, funnily enough, one of them has announced their retirement yesterday, and the other one we expect to be announced soon. So Jared Harbrow, Zach Smith, and Rory Thompson. So Brendan, we're going to get into the list now, but they've had 3 retirements in the last 2 days. What are your thoughts on those retirements and filling those gaps now moving forward?
Yep. So Zach Smith, being a ruckman, and he's in the 30 age bracket, I feel these players haven't been offered another contract, and that's why they've retired prematurely. But all 3 of them are role players. If you look at Jack Hombach, Jordan Murdoch, who came from Geelong, and Zach Smith, who returned from Geelong as well. All 3 are role players. So I feel that they haven't been offered another contract, and that's why they've retired prematurely, especially Jack and Jordan, who are in their late 20s.
Yeah. So now we move on to what we believe is their emerging talent and untouchables. So A-graders, we didn't have anyone as of yet, Brendan. Obviously, there's a lot of talent up there. They've had a lot of high-end draft picks, but in our opinion, none of them have hit A-grade level yet. Would you like to explain why?
Yep. So looking at their age demographic, they've got a lot of players between that 18 to 22 or 18 to 24 brackets. So we feel when you hit your peak around that 25 age bracket, that's when you're going to become an A grader. And we've seen that in the past with certain players. There are a lot of B+ players in this team, including the likes of Ben King, Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson, Jack Lukosius, Isaac Rankin, Ben King. But there's not a lot of A graders as per se. That being said, a lot of these players will become A graders in the future.
Yeah. So the one that we were umming and ahhing about was Took Miller there, who's probably the most improved player in the comp of becoming an A grader. Where have you seen him go? We saw him at Quarter Cannons as he was coming through the system, and now to be where he is. What do you think of his rise in the last year, and what do you think's changed in his game?
Yep. So when we first saw him at Calder Cannon, so he was drafted, I think, around that pick 11 as a high-end inside midfielder that can accumulate possessions. But through his journey, he's always played second fiddle a lot to the star Gold Coast midfielders. But he has really come into his own at that 25 years old, because he is now one of the leaders of that club. And I feel that he's taken an onus and preparation and leadership on himself to be able to improve that midfield group, because he's got to develop the likes of the Matt Rowells under him. So Took Miller is the closest player they have to a genuine A grader at the moment because of his improvement, averaging around that 32 possessions a game, and a lot of them being contested possessions, despite their on-field performance.
Yeah. So we look through the emerging talent. They've got Josh Corbett, Ben Ainsworth, Charlie Ballard, Will Powell, and Connor Buderick. Untouchables are Sam Collins, Took Miller, Lukosius, King, Rowell, Anderson, and Flanders. Their needs, well, A graders, they're going to come from within their list. But the one thing they do need is experience. And it seems to me that when the Gold Coast go and find experience, Brendan, they're always role players. They're never, ever the superstars besides, say, Gary Ablett, who they got as a foundation player. So what do you think about them moving forward and getting experience? Is it just a matter of time to pump more games into the young guys? Or do you think they should go out and find someone to fill that age gap in their list?
Yep. So as we've seen, and we've already spoken about Oleg Markov at 24 years of age, he is a genuine role player across half back flank. And then you've got the likes of, so they did try to trade in a superstar midfielder in Lockie Weller, but he has become more of a role player for the team. He's playing another role similar to Took Miller in developing the younger list at 25, because he's now one of the leaders. So he's taken a bit of a back step and just become a role player. Players like Jared Witts, who was brought into the club as a role-playing ruckman, has now become their captain and one of their genuine leaders. Unfortunately, he's been injured for majority of the year. They brought in Brandon Ellis as a role-playing wingman who has filled that role and again offers that leadership to the club. Rory Atkins was brought in as a free agent over the off-season. He's 26, but he's struggled to gain games, and what the media has been speculating is he hasn't been lifting to the standards that Stuart Dew has set for the club. But you know, that is all hearsay. But Rory Atkins is a genuine role player, and he was the same at the Adelaide Crows.
Yeah. So I want to talk about their goal kicking overall. Now, they've got Ben King, who's their number one goal kicker, and out of the league, he's position 9th with 43 goals. Their next best is all the way down in 56th position with 22 goals. They are the lowest scoring team this year in the AFL. So what do they need to change? Is it a system thing? Is it a player thing? What are you seeing up there that they need to change to be able to score more goals and win more matches?
The thing that they need to change is that system-based philosophy and those structures within the coaching structure. However, because of their youthful list, they just need to keep pumping in those games. And as we've already stated, you know, despite all the role players, these A graders are going to carry them through to the future, but they're going to have that problem of being able to retain some of those players going forward. They do have that drop in, you know, 0.3% in that age bracket this year, because they did turn over 11 players last year. And their games percentage was a drop in 1.9 as well. And that's saying to me that there is a structural problem, and that's because of the limited games experience. So they do need to start adding those role players in to be able to take the heat off some of those future A graders. So that's the way they're going to continue to develop, and there's no way around it really because of the young list.
Yeah. So just to finish on the Suns, I want to talk about a homegrown talent that we know quite well in Raul. Now, this year, he's come back from an injury. He's been not quite himself. But we saw last year's first 5 games were probably the best first 5 games we've ever seen from a player. So what do you think needs to change for him to get back to where he was at the start of last year? And obviously, as time goes, he's going to develop more. Does he just need a really good preseason, or do you think there's something else there for him to change?
No, I think for Matt Rowell, and as we've seen, he's a very driven individual, and he was through his junior career. Matt Rowell has come back from injury a little too early this year, I feel, and they have brought him back, and he hasn't really lived up to his potential as per se, and it's more of that second year blues. He will need a strong preseason, and he'll get that throughout this 2021 off season. But he will reach that potential. And it was similar to another player at another club in Sam Walsh, had a couple of those second year blues and didn't live up to that potential of that number 1 tag. But Matt Rowell is very driven and will live up to that. And he just needs to get over those niggles and start really competing with the likes of those A-grade midfielders, because he has been battered and bashed around a fair bit this year, because he effectively is seen by other clubs as the Gold Coast number 1 midfielder.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us today on Talent Talk. If you've enjoyed the video, please comment and like below and share it with your friends and family far and wide. Melbourne, Sydney, New South Wales, we hope you're doing all right in lockdown. I know we're starting to go stir crazy. But stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be doing the next 4 teams on the ladder, and we'll have a few interviews coming up with some hopeful draftees in the next few weeks. So have a good day. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys soon.